What if I told you that Ferrari has just discovered too late that its SF-26 could be fast, but completely unsustainable in the race? Because what happened at Miami 2026 was not just an accident between Lewis Hamilton and Franco Colapinto. It was the exact moment in which all the hidden data of the new Ferrari came to light, revealing a truth that no one in Maranello wanted to see. A car that promised to revolutionize Formula One, that came with the most aggressive package of the year, ended up exposing critical weaknesses in just one lap. And now the big question is not who was to blame for the crash, but what the SF-26 was really hiding. The weekend at Miami 2026 began with a completely different feeling within Ferrari, a mix of expectation, pressure, and contained confidence that has not been seen for a long time. It was no wonder. The team arrived with the most important update package of the entire season, an evolution that not only sought to improve the SF-26, but to completely redefine its behavior on the track. For weeks, in Maranello, they worked in silence, accumulating kilometers in the simulator, private tests, and internal validations that pointed to a real competitive leap. This was not a simple upgrade, it was a declaration of intent. Ferrari wanted to return to the top, and Miami was the setting chosen to demonstrate it. But what made this moment even greater was the context. Ferrari had had structural doubts in its technical philosophy since previous seasons, where the car's performance often depended on very specific conditions to shine, showing high peaks but also worrying drops. Therefore, this new package not only had to make the car faster, but also more complete, more stable, more consistent. The bet was total, and within the team, there was a feeling that they had found something special, something that could change the course of the championship. The SF-26 that took to the track in Miami was not the same car as previous races. Ferrari had redesigned practically all the critical areas of the car, a new front wing to improve airflow management, a completely revised floor to maximize ground effect, changes to the suspension to optimize mechanical balance, and an evolved diffuser that promised greater load without penalizing top speed. But if there was an element that symbolized this new philosophy, it was the famous active rear wing, the so-called Macarena, a radical solution that sought to dynamically reduce straight-line resistance, something that no other team had implemented with that level of aggressiveness. Internal expectations were very high. The simulation data spoke of clear improvements, especially in top speed, where Ferrari estimated gains of up to 10 kilometers per hour. That, combined with better aerodynamic efficiency, could make the SF-26 an extremely competitive car on circuits like Miami. Everything seemed aligned. Everything indicated that this was Ferrari's moment. But there was a problem that was not yet visible, a weakness that did not appear in the simulators or controlled tests, the fragility of the concept. And that weakness became evident at the worst possible moment. As soon as the race started on the first lap, at a point where the entire peloton was still compressed, contact between Hamilton and Colapinto completely changed the course of the weekend. It was not a spectacular accident, it was not a devastating impact in visual terms, but it was surgical in technical terms. The damage was concentrated on the left side of the car, affecting key areas of aerodynamic flow, and in a matter of seconds the SF-26 lost its competitive identity. From that moment, everything changed. Hamilton felt it immediately on the steering wheel. The car stopped responding as it should, it lost stability, it lost charge, it lost performance. The radio communication made it clear something important had disappeared from the car. And the most serious thing was not only the damage itself, but the magnitude of its consequences. Ferrari had no room to react, there was no possible solution during the race, and what should have been the great validation of the SF-26 became a failed test. Because this is where the problem really begins. It wasn't just that Hamilton was racing with a damaged car, but how that damage affected overall performance. The first data began to show something worrying. The loss of aerodynamic load was not proportional to the damage suffered. It was much greater than expected. This indicated that the car relied on an extremely precise aerodynamic structure, with each component playing a critical role in the overall balance. When one part broke, the entire system collapsed. Ferrari not only lost performance in that race, he lost something much more important, the certainty that his car was solid. Because if the SF-26 needs to be in perfect condition to function correctly, then any incident, any contact, any slight variation can make it a vulnerable car. And in today's Formula One, where races are decided in details and traffic is constant, that is a weakness that can cost an entire championship. What began as the most promising weekend of the year for Ferrari ended up becoming the beginning of a much bigger doubt. A doubt that can no longer be hidden. A doubt that is now supported by real data. Is the SF-26 a revolutionary car or a concept that is too extreme to survive in a race? The true impact of what happened in Miami was not understood on the track. It was understood later. Because while the race continued and Ferrari tried to save the furniture with a discreet result, in the garage and in Maranello, a much deeper, much colder, much more worrying analysis began. The SF-26 data after Lewis Hamilton's accident began to reveal something that no one expected to see so clearly. The car had not only lost performance, it had collapsed in its aerodynamic structure in a disproportionate way. This is where everything changes. Because in Formula One, losing downforce after damage is normal, is part of the sport. But what Ferrari detected was not normal. The loss of performance did not follow a logical curve. It was not progressive. It was abrupt, almost violent. The SF-26 went from being a competitive car to one unable to sustain the pace in a matter of seconds, and that set off all the alarms. It wasn't just the damage, it was how the car reacted to the damage. The engineers began to cross-reference data, telemetry, aerodynamic maps, previous simulations, correlation with the wind tunnel. And what they found was even more disturbing. The design of the SF-26 appeared to depend on an extremely precise interaction between multiple aerodynamic elements. The floor, the side pods, the side deflectors, everything was so interconnected that the alteration of a single area would break the entire balance of the car. That is, there was no redundancy in the system. There was no margin for error. This explains why the damage to the left side had such a devastating effect. It wasn't just a missing piece, it was a chain reaction. The air flow stopped behaving as planned, the floor lost efficiency, the diffuser stopped working in its optimal range, and the car as a whole lost stability and load massively. It's as if the SF-26 is designed to function at a perfect point, but unable to adapt when that point is broken. And here appears the most critical data of all. Ferrari's previous simulations had not reflected this level of sensitivity. Under ideal conditions, the car was fast, even very fast. But those ideal conditions did not include realistic racing damage scenarios. Miami was the first time the SF-26 was exposed to that kind of stress, and the result was a car that couldn't survive the imperfection. This completely changes the reading of the project, because it's no longer just a question of whether the car is fast, but whether it is usable in real racing conditions. A Formula One car not only needs maximum performance, it needs consistency, resilience, and the ability to adapt. And in that aspect, the Miami data leaves the SF-26 in a very compromised position. Furthermore, this problem does not come in isolation. If we look back, Ferrari had already shown in other seasons a certain dependence on very specific configurations to extract performance. But now that dependence seems to have amplified. They have taken the concept to the extreme, seeking to maximize every aerodynamic detail, but sacrificing margin of tolerance. And in Formula One, that margin is everything. The most worrying thing is that this type of problem is not solved with a simple update. It's not changing a spoiler or adjusting a suspension. It's a design philosophy problem. It is structural. And that means Ferrari could face a very difficult decision. Continue developing a concept that is fast but fragile, or completely rethink the basis of the SF-26. Meanwhile, rivals watch. Because if Miami made one thing clear, it is that Ferrari can have speed, yes, but it also has a weakness that can be exploited. And in a season where every point counts, where every race defines the championship, that weakness can be the difference between fighting for the title or falling short again.